let's dive right into 2024. Chris Christie, which you just asked me whether or not he was declared. I don't believe he is declared. I don't think he's declared.
Yeah, Chris Christie, are you serious? So anyway, so Chris Christie is in the news. We can put this up here because he's telling Republican voters that you need somebody that's going to be able to go mano a mano with Donald Trump. And the reason that he says he's going to be able to be that one, even though he was completely humiliated by Jared Kushner. If you have been humiliated and like beaten down by Jared Kushner, I don't think you get to call yourself like the man of the macho moment.
If you've been emasculated by Jared Kushner.
So he is referring back to, as everybody can probably guess by now, that time he owned Marco Rubio.
Oh, he loves it. It's like a high school quarterback, right?
But here's the problem, and everybody has to remember that viral debate moment where Marco Rubio kept repeating himself, saying, let's dispel with this notion that whatever, something Obama.
Right.
He said it like 3 times. Christie didn't own him. Everybody watching that across the world, it's like, why do you keep saying that? Right. Like it was the most obvious debate gaffe that I've probably ever seen in my life. and kudos to Chris Christie for saying, oh, you're doing it again.
Right.
But he was doing it again.
Yeah.
Like, if that's your whole rationale, he was sort of Trump before Trump in a way. Like when he won the New Jersey governorship, he was this brash macho dude who was telling the liberals, where they needed to go. And that was like refreshing for a lot of kind of Republican voters. Then he buddies up with Barack Obama in 2012 after Hurricane Sandy, and he's been pretty much persona non grata since then. And Trump is just, he's a 2010 Chris Christie times like 1,000.
You can't, I think it's even apples and oranges.
Yeah.
This is the direct quote from Chris Christie, who was at St. Anselm in New Hampshire on Monday. So he's not declared, but he is roaming the New Hampshire wilderness, which can only mean one thing. He's seriously considering a bid. Quote, you better have somebody on that stage who can do to Trump what I did to Marco, because that's the only thing that's going to defeat Donald Trump. That is a ridiculous opinion. First and foremost, that is, if you compare what he did to Marco to any of their attempts to take down Donald Trump, not just in the Republican primary in 2016, but since then, absolutely nothing works, because as soon as you try to mud wrestle with Donald Trump, you lose. There is absolutely nobody who can mud wrestle with Donald Trump and beat him. He is the undisputed champion of American political mud wrestling. And if someone can show me another politician that can beat Donald Trump at mud wrestling, I would be shocked. Right. And it's not going to come from you saying that Marco Rubio is repeating himself. It's just not on par with that at all.
Right. And Trump had already almost literally emasculated him with the little Marco. And then, they got into the whole contest about who had bigger hands.
Yes.
And Trump just went right there.
Yeah.
None of these people are up for what Trump's going to bring.
That's a good point, because Marco Rubio memorably went after the size of Trump's hands in South Carolina, because there were all of these reports saying Donald Trump is really, really insecure about the size of his hands, because that's innuendo, and is actually very insecure about the size of you can fill in the blank. And Marco Rubio's team really thought that they got him on that one. Yeah. They really thought that was the way to go. And you can't mud wrestle with Donald Trump. He basically came out and had a hilarious response that endeared more voters to Donald Trump. It completely backfired. Really it's just impossible. So if Chris Christie, who, by the way, is asked by an audience member, when are you going to take down Trump, replies, I have my timetable. If he seriously thinks that he can mud wrestle with Donald Trump and come out on top, he's more delusional than I even realized.
So speaking of delusional, Ron DeSantis. So let's play.
I do not support or endorse that transition.
So let's play. So Megyn Kelly has apparently been asking Ron DeSantis to come on to her show for an interview for quite some time. He hasn't said yes yet. She saw him on Piers Morgan recently. That got her upset, and that led to this clip. Let's play Megyn Kelly here.
I will say for the record, we asked DeSantis to come on the show. He has not said yes. And I find that very interesting. I love Piers Morgan. He's a pal of mine. But why would you go sit with the British guy and not come on the show? And I do think there's a reason for it. And I will venture to say he's afraid. I'm just going to put it out there. He's afraid because he knows the kind of interview that I would give him. He's not going to get a pass. Same as Trump never got a pass from me.
This is into the machismo tough guy who can do, who can handle it better. And so how does this work for DeSantis to have, first of all, to have Megyn Kelly? So who is Megyn Kelly in the Republican ecosystem right now? Because she's kind of transformed her role a little bit.
Yeah, so Megyn Kelly is an extremely popular podcaster. I mean, you can just call it at this point what it is. She's an extremely popular broadcaster who has pretty wide reach on the right, and I think probably in the center as well. Voters that Ron DeSantis would definitely need. I actually was on a Jeep tour in Sedona a couple of weeks ago, and a woman from Florida recognized me from going on Megyn Kelly's show.
Whenever I go on her show, I hear from people I went to high school with.
It's a huge
That's always
show.
kind of like my marker of how big the show is. Like if it gets out into kind of your high school friends that you haven't seen 20 years or something.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge show, and I do think it's important to the voters that Ron DeSantis would need to win. So I anticipate this actually means Ron DeSantis is going to be on Megyn Kelly's show fairly quickly.
End of the week.
And I actually think that's probably what she was doing. And I do think it's true. People definitely, especially on the left, I think underestimate Megyn Kelly. She gives good interviews. She's like very prosecutorial in her interviews of candidates. And I think it's probably makes sense that Ron DeSantis, at this stage, not having formally announced anything, would want to avoid that on his book tour, because that's where he's been making all these media appearances with Piers Morgan and everyone else, that you wouldn't necessarily want to dive into like a pretty prosecutorial back and forth in a venue that is important to you because of the people that it reaches. So that would be my read on the situation, but I think this probably does get DeSantis on the show.
So basically you're saying that she's right, that tough questions like the kind that Megyn Kelly delivers don't play into the strategy around a book tour.
Right. The book tour strategy, Megyn Kelly's not on it for a reason.
Interesting.
I think that's true. I mean, with Piers Morgan, it's tabloidy, right? It's more, what do you think about Donald Trump saying this and that? And it's not going to be, I think, probably...
Like, you've said this and you did that. Like, you used to support privatizing Social Security. Like, where are you now?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
Piers Morgan's not going to do that.
No, he's not going to do that.
That's what we would do. So we should put a request out to DeSantis, and then if he's not on here by next week, we can shame him. How's that?
We should start doing that more often. Once a week, we should shame someone into coming on the show and see what
right.
happens. We'd love to have
go.
DeSantis. It would be a lot of fun. But on that note, Mike Pence is also making the rounds. Even though he's making the rounds, I will also say he's wrapped into the January 6th situation. This is news from yesterday. A federal judge has ordered former Vice President Mike Pence to testify in the federal probe of Donald Trump's bid to subvert the 2020 election, according to a person familiar with the ruling. So that's a big hurdle. Mike Pence's team has sort of resisted it. So clearly they see it as a big hurdle. I don't know. I don't know that it's...
Well, why does this team against it? Because they've turned kind of state's evidence in public pretty consistently. They've come after him on every platform that they can find. Is it just the fact that they don't want to be seen collaborating with Democrats in coming after him?
I think that's probably it. I think that's when I was trying to figure out, what the sticking point might be there is I think it's the optics. First of all, it's the optics of being pulled into a grand jury probe. Not great. And on top of it, it looks like you can see how it would be framed as like collusion with the forces that are out to get Donald Trump. Now, this is a quote from Politico. Legal scholars generally agree that Pence has a legitimate case that his role as president of the Senate may warrant immunity from testimony sought by the executive branch. So the federal appeals court in Washington is expected to rule imminently on a separate effort that's related to Scott Perry. So it's actually kind of about a powers situation, like separation of powers question, and not as clear-cut as maybe it seems.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.